an American patriot and someone who served South Carolina so incredibly well, and also just a really dear friend of mine. I will say that as a guy that got married at 58 years young for the first time, that I only invited 4 people from the Senate to my wedding, and Lindsey was one of them. And you probably have heard the story that I've told on TV about how Lindsey comes into a room and no one's invisible. And Lindsey sees this kid, and we're all standing around. There's little anxiety in the room because it's early on, and literally Lindsey gets on his knees and gets eye to eye with the kid and says, "Case, there's no Social Security for you, buddy. So sorry." And it just cracked us all up as adults. Case wanted a toy. He didn't want to talk about Social Security. But that just reflects the humor of Lindsey Graham. And I will tell you that without any question, one of the things I'm going to sorely miss about my friend is his ability to bring humor into some of the most stressful situations that you could find yourself in. And he was just a master of using wit and humor to diffuse a room. And at the same time, one of the things I think we'll miss from Lindsey as a nation is someone who was just instinctively a bridge builder. Here's a guy who could build a bridge between Republicans and Democrats. He could disagree vehemently with you across the aisle and then find one piece of common ground and build a friendship off that piece of common ground. I saw him do it time and time and time again. And one of the things I think is missing in today's political world are those folks who can not just build a bridge with folks on the other side of the aisle, but at the same time, he had this unique ability to build a bridge from the Republican Senate to the White House. And then he could knit it all together and find a path forward for all of us to do the right thing for the bosses that we call constituents back at home in South Carolina. And we should all celebrate a statesman who literally was very comfortable in his own skin and at the same time felt he had an obligation and a responsibility to bring this nation just a little closer. He did all of that. And frankly, as we have been hearing from global leaders, Lindsey Graham, without question, was perhaps the most prolific person on the issue of foreign policy in the United States Senate because it was a part of who he was. Wet and water, inseparable. Lindsey Graham and foreign policy, inseparable. And so I'm going to miss Lindsey a lot. Yeah, our country is going to miss his leadership, and the world is going to look for someone to fill shoes that are unfillable. Lindsey Graham, irreplaceable. I'll turn to the topic of his replacement. I was thankful to see Darlene Graham say yes to the opportunity to serve in Lindsey's stead. I'll say I've met with Darlene over the years, more than a decade of talking with her, sitting down with her and seeing her in action as she advocated on behalf of South Carolinians and others with specific special needs. But watching her at the press conference with the governor just a couple of days ago, I was like, wow, a Graham is a Graham is a Graham. And literally the governor was being so kind to her, and rightfully so. And he's talking about Lindsey, and I think most of us probably heard one of the words he used was, Lindsey's just irresistible, and he is, magnanimous, and he's fantastic, whatever else he said, I can't remember. And Darla comes up there with tears in her eyes and fighting back those tears, says, "Governor McMaster, I've heard my brother called a lot of things, but I've never heard him called irresistible." And I just couldn't help but to laugh inside at someone who could start out on one of the hardest days in her life, missing her brother, her surrogate dad and mom, walk up to a podium and with grace and grit perform in front of an audience of millions. That's just part of the Graham DNA I found. Just a remarkable thing. On next Wednesday, I've been doing a South Carolina prayer breakfast for all the folks who live in South Carolina or businesses from South Carolina who have a presence here. We typically have 200, 300 people. This year, next Wednesday, the 22nd, we will honor Lindsey Graham at the prayer breakfast starting at 8:30 and 9 o'clock. You guys are all welcome to come. I'd also say that Darlene said this morning that she's looking forward to being there. I'm sure that we will have lots of Lindsey Graham stories. I'm not sure how you exactly connect all the colorful language he had, with Scripture, but we're going to try really hard to figure that out. Sometimes the shortest Scripture might be, "He wept." That might be all we can say in honor of Lindsey on some of the topics that we'll discuss. Finally, there's no doubt that the path to becoming a United States Senator is an arduous path and a difficult task. I will say that it typically takes years in planning. This time around, you just have a few weeks before there's an election day. And so I'm not surprised that there are a number of people that have reached out to me and to others who are very interested in running for his seat. And most of them, frankly, understand that myself and many of us are still in mourning. And frankly, the shock of it hasn't worn off for me yet. But the process of picking his replacement, it is all on. And the truth of the matter is that we've received lots of calls from lots of folks who are very interested in running. I'm hoping that we have someone who embodies the spirit of Lindsey, who decides to step up to the plate, someone who understands that we are first called to be public servants, that we actually work for the people of South Carolina. And at the same time, I can't think of anyone who will be able to do what Lindsey did. I mean, a guy stuck on foreign policy without any question, but he also became the budget chair. How you find someone who can do all the things that Lindsey did as well as Lindsey did it, I don't expect that, but I'm not surprised that so many people, a lot of capable people, are very interested in what's next for South Carolina's senator. And I hope and pray that we give the voters as much time and time to deliberate before we put our thumbs on the scale and let them see this process unfold, see as many candidates get in the race as humanly possible, and then let the voters have their last say on who will honor the legacy, I pray, but certainly become the next United States Senator representing the great state of South Carolina.